One day closer, folks, to the opener at Kinnick Stadium against Utah State. And we are counting down with all of you right here at the Voice of College Football, Hawkeyes Live for our 105th edition. We're getting deeper and deeper into August. Of course, the place to be on a regular basis every day is over with Corey Breda from the Hawkeye of the Storm. Get on over there, check out Corey's latest on Iowa football. Hey, Corey, how you doing today?
I'm good, Mark. So you're counting down the days to Iowa, Utah State? Just want to clarify that.
Oh, to the exact kickoff. Much like I was counting down to the South Dakota State game at this point last year.
Well, your patience paid off once you got.
Absolutely it did. Absolutely it did. We could add to that countdown to kickoff a countdown to Iowa's first touchdown, which of course would have been delayed by a week last year.
Almost more than a week. Almost a couple weeks, because Iowa narrowly scored a touchdown week 2, and it was off of a 20-yard field. so anyways, so lots of cool stuff to talk about. I did find it interesting that Iowa's not releasing their typical media photo galleries that they do during camp. Usually they have like a photo gallery every day. So I don't know if they don't have they have a photographer out there because they keep posting to social media, but they're not posting these large galleries. I don't know if it's because they don't want that to become a discussion topic. And by the way, I'm fine with that. I thought it was always kind of stupid. You kind of had to do it. You kind of had to follow the photos each day because that's just what else is there to talk about when there's not, leaks coming from fall camp. But I have noticed a couple of social media posts, and I sarcastically posted something here maybe a couple hours ago, Mark. I don't know if you saw it, but it was a brief clip of the Iowa offense. And basically it was a clip of Caleb Brown lining up. And it looked to me, he's lining up with Deacon Hill at quarterback and a bunch of other guys that are not starters. And so I tweeted out, "Oh my goodness, Caleb Brown lining up with the threes, everyone panic." And so, of course, certain people who take themselves way too seriously, "Don't be that guy. It's his first week of practice. No need to stir the pot. It's been only a week. He has 3 more versus the threes to work his way up. It's early. He just started practicing. He'll work his way up." I was kidding. I'm joking. There is no reason to be reading into one clip where Caleb Brown is on the field with Deacon Hill at quarterback. Just calm down. Okay? Believe me, I'm not reading into that at all. So anyways, but what else do we have to talk about at this point? I guess we could talk about the coaches poll that came out. Iowa was snubbed on that. And what are we, 25, 26 days from kickoff?
Iowa was snubbed? Well, they're not in the top 25.
Well, snubbed. I saw that a lot of other people not named Corey Brada use that term snubbed over the past week.
So they're number 26, folks, in the coaches poll. I don't have the poll in front of me to know how many votes they received.
You want me to pull that up?
Well, it was only a few minutes ago that I looked at it just to confirm where they were placed. And so there were a substantial number of coaches that did place them in the top 25, obviously.
So they were 30 votes out of 25th place. So Texas A&M had 196 votes. Iowa had 169 votes. And then you look at, it's interesting, there was a clear top 26 if you're looking at the coaches' points, because then it's a plummeted drop to South Carolina at 27 with 89 votes. So Iowa had nearly double the amount of votes that South Carolina got. But here's the deal. Well, I saw people, and this is the way it is, and I used to be this way to an extent, I guess. But as an average fan, you look at that and you're kind of irritated mildly. We're not being respected. I couldn't have been happier when I saw that. Like, I saw CBS Sports had Iowa in the top 25, I think on 3 or whatever. A couple of those early rankings that don't really matter. Not that this one really does, but they didn't have Iowa in the top 25. This one matters more than those. Like, this is one that you're going to see coaches poll and the AP poll. Those are the ones early in the season that people kind of pay attention to. Frankly, I don't want Iowa ranked. Why? What does it do? What does it do for Iowa to
Nothing.
have a little 25 next to the name when they're on Big Ten Network week 1? What does it do? All it does is it shouldn't, but all it does is it potentially creates a bigger target on the back of Iowa as a whole, because a team like Utah State or whoever Iowa's facing knows they have an opportunity to take down a top 25 team. Now, chances are, Mark, if Iowa dominates Utah State week 1, they'll probably be ranked week 2. That's just kind of how these things work. Somebody's probably going to lose, and Iowa will take their place. You and I both know that the rankings are not made coherently and not made effectively based on criteria, I think, effective criteria. But I couldn't care less that they weren't ranked. In fact, I was happy that they weren't. I just don't see any reason why that does them any good. And I say that every year.
Especially since we went to a college football playoff. The rankings really don't matter at all now. They did
never
at one point.
But they never matter. Well, I shouldn't say they never mattered preseason. Unfortunately, they have mattered preseason, and we can talk about why that is. But, like Kirk Ferentz has professed over and over and over again, who cares what somebody's guessing preseason? And that's one of the issues we have with the way these rankings are made up, and that's why the college football playoff system, you got to be glad that those rankings don't come out till much later in the year. But what's the point of these preseason polls other than hype? They don't do anything except set a standard and a precedent and a bar that a team either meets or does not meet. And as we've stated before, like, who does, let's give an example. Who does Michigan play week 1?
East Carolina.
Okay, East Carolina. So if they lose to East Carolina, I'm assuming they're going to play them in Ann Arbor, correct?
Yes.
If they lose to East Carolina, will Michigan be ranked week 2?
Since they started at number 2 in the country, yes.
Oh,
they will be.
There's the truth.
Since they started at number 2, yes.
So even though they would have one of the worst resumes in all of college football after week 1, they'd still be ranked. You see how absurd that is?
It is absurd.
Stupid setup.
If they started ranked 17th, they would drop out. But since they're starting number 2, they would drop. They would be a healthy drop, but they would drop to 15, 16, something like that.
It is so stupid.
Yeah,
that
it is stupid.
Part of a team's resume is where they were ranked the week prior. Especially when their week prior was based on guessing. That's what's so stupid about it. But anyways, so I would rather Iowa not be ranked. There's no reason for them to be ranked. I guess at some point they're going to be ranked if you're going to achieve great things. But why do you care preseason? I think, know, based on the schedule and based on the conference they play in, if Iowa goes 10-2, 11-1, they're going to have a shot during championship week to be in the conversation. And I'm talking about top 4 berth. I'm not saying they're going to be 11-1, 10-2, but if they are, they'll be in the conversation. And you may say, well, Corey, how could they be in the conversation at 10-2? They beat Ohio State or Michigan in the championship game. They're 11-2 conference champions. They're in the conversation. Maybe they're not in, but they're in the conversation.
Yes. Just to further your point, let's all consider this, that if you and I just selected teams that we believe are good, much like the coaches have here, and we selected these teams and we placed them in the top 25, we would think that we could get, I don't know, 17 or 18 of the 25. We could guess that many. Do you know how many teams from last season's preseason top 25 did not finish ranked?
Probably at least 3 or 4.
13.
Wow.
More than half of you could throw darts and do as well. So more than half. This just extends on your point that it's even more invalid than many people believe. Now, the typical number is in the 8 to 9 range.
Okay.
About 8 to 9 teams typically will not finish in the top 25 that were preseason top 25. And obviously, then there are 8 or 9 teams that were not ranked that will finish ranked. Also, to extend on your point and give it more validity, I've actually talked to people who vote in these polls, let's say Associated Press voters, and there should be at least a common approach, you would think, Like, this is what we are voting on. This is what, but some of them will tell you, especially in the preseason poll, that they're looking at team schedules and they're looking at the schedule and determining you may not be a top 25 team, but your schedule is really easy. So you'll probably finish in the top 25. They're making a prediction.
What a beautiful set of criteria there,
Yeah.
Mark. How
They're
beautiful.
making a prediction. Or you've got a really tough schedule. I think you're one of the top 5 teams in the country, but man, your schedule is brutal. So you'll finish about 13. So they're making predictions. That's one way. The other way is what I think is the more valid. And anytime I've ever done a preseason top 25, this has been my approach. I simply believe these are the 25 best teams in the country in order without any thought process to who they play, because that will be its own determinant when we get there.
So Iowa should have been 2015. They should have been a preseason like top 5 team because they had a week schedule, and they ended up going 12-0. That is again just unbelievably dumb.
Yes,
but that's how this works. And so, are you doing a top 25, a preseason top 25?
People will watch it. I probably should. I don't really want to.
It can't be one that, you know what? I tell you what.
I enjoy the top 25 once they start playing. Now I enjoy producing that video.
But I think if you're going to make a preseason top 25, it has to be a top 25 that actually makes sense. And the only way for it to make sense is to look at data like returning production, recruiting data, all of that. That's the only way to make it make sense. I mean, I have no problem with you just saying based off who you think, not even looking up extra data, okay, these are the top 25 teams. But for it to actually make sense like you do throughout the season, you'd have to look at data. That's the thing about you brought up these media people. I just, the very concept of these polls makes no sense to me because you and I both know they're not watching all these games. They're not. You think Chad Leistikow of the Des Moines Register, who's a voter, is watching, TCU, Kansas State during Iowa and Indiana? I mean, you can't expect anybody to do that. And the coaches, believe me, those coaches are not watching. They're probably watching even less than the media. They're barely watching their own conference members because they're so honed in on their own games.
I became more and more aware of this when I was a sports director at a CBS station in Mississippi, and I was locked in on Alabama, Ole Miss, and Mississippi State. Well, having the background that I do and being of the mindset that I am, I'm at that point, sports junkie. I'll say college football junkie, that I was doing everything I could, DVRing games all over the place to watch everyone. So I was more of and I was not entrenched in the culture in the SEC to be that narrow-minded. But these people, they have a job to do. To your point, they have a job to do. And for example, here was a typical Saturday of covering, let's say I was going to the Alabama LSU game. They were playing at 2:30, let's say Central Time, playing at 2:30 local time. Got to get there like an hour and a half before the game, 1 o'clock. Got to leave, got to gear up, go to the station, So you're missing every game that kicks off for you, Central Time, 11 a.m. You're not seeing any of those games. You go to this Alabama LSU game. They kick off at 2:30. Game's over at 6:15. You go to the locker room for interviews. You go to the post game. You're not getting out of there until 7:30. You're driving an hour and a half. You're getting back. You're editing. You're getting prepared for the 10 o'clock news. All your entire day has been consumed with Alabama and LSU. You've seen, heard nothing else.
One of the many reasons why when people have asked me, Mark, did you ever aspire to be part of the Iowa media? No, I have no interest. I'll enjoy college football, Mark. And I've said to you several times since last year, I watched less college football last year just with this show than I ever have. And I didn't like that. I'm not saying I'm going to pull back on content, but yeah, I mean, the idea that you can be a million places at one time is absurd. Now, before we move on from the coaches poll, Mark, I do want to ask you a little trivia question. I want to see what your talent level. I know you know your Power 5 football really well, but we don't talk Group of 5 or FCS football enough. We're not going to touch on FCS, but I want to ask you, can you name, how many of the teams in the Group of 5 can you name that received votes in the preseason coaches poll? There's only one, and actually in the top 25. You know who that is?
Tulane.
Okay, good job. They're at 23, and they're coming off obviously a bowl victory against USC. But do you remember any of the other teams, or do you know any? Can you guess any of the
I've
teams
not
that
looked at
received
it,
votes?
so these would be my guesses. And we're talking probably about another 20 teams close to it that received votes. I would think Texas San Antonio received votes.
That's the next highest.
Oh,
In
okay.
fact, they're in the top 30.
I would guess that all the usual suspects from the, of course, from the American Conference moved on to the Big 12. I would think Boise State did.
Boise State did.
I would think
you skipped one, right?
Okay.
You're going in order. You skipped one that received more votes than Boise.
Okay, I would think that would probably be Fresno State.
I'm sorry, you skipped two over for Boise. So Fresno did receive votes, and there's one other team that received more votes than Fresno. They received 25 votes.
I'm guessing maybe not. I'm not going to try to get them in order. I'm just going to try to pick them off.
Okay.
I bet James Madison received maybe a vote or one vote.
One vote.
All right. I still haven't missed yet. How many more teams do I have to get?
Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Really? 6 more.
6 more.
I think I've named 4. App State.
No, App State is not on the list.
Shoot, I missed. I knew that I was going out on a limb there. SMU.
SMU is on there, received 8 votes.
I can't imagine anyone in the MAC would receive votes. Back to the Mountain West, I would.
There is a team in the MAC, by the way.
Really? Somebody believes a MAC team is going to finish in the top 25, or they're one of the 25 best teams in the country. I guess it would be Toledo.
5 votes for Toledo.
Okay. And again, I'm going to the Mountain West. I would think, did Air Force get votes?
Good job. 6 votes for Air Force. Well, you're actually better at this than I would have expected. So you've only had 1 miss so far.
Yeah, shoot, App State. How many more do I have to? Maybe 2, 3?
There's a team from the American that received 1 vote.
Well, who would be left? The teams that I'm thinking of, I don't believe that they would have received a vote. Who am I missing? Memphis.
Good. Received 1 vote. And the only team, let me see who we missed here. So there's 2 teams left on here, and as much confidence as I have in you, I don't think you're going to get either one of these.
No?
Although one of the teams received 8 votes and the other received 25 votes.
25?
Yep.
San Diego State.
No, actually, San Diego State is not on this list, I don't believe.
Yeah,
these are 2 tough ones, actually. Well, especially the one is tough.
Coastal Carolina.
No, but I associate these 2 teams with Coastal because they're both teams that.
Liberty.
You're getting closer. I'm sure the viewers are loving this, but
Exactly.
You give up?
Yeah, I could just start naming every team in the country.
So South Alabama got 8 votes.
Okay. Really?
And the team that got 25 votes was Troy.
Oh. Okay. That surprises me.
So
you're going to surprise me. I've not studied the group of 5. I need to do what?
I think you ought to do a season preview for Troy. I've never that's when I see that name on there, that's the one. I know did they win 11 games last year?
I believe 2 years ago. So Troy, They might have last year. They, of course, they were coached by Billy Napier, who got the Florida job because he was so successful there. They beat LSU a few years ago. So,
And so who's their head coach now? Do you know?
I would know a name if I saw it, but I can't come up with it right this second.
So obviously, as you alluded to earlier, Houston, BYU, both those teams are part of the Big 12 now. And yeah,
UCF.
UCF is, you know what? I don't, where is UCF here?
No votes.
No votes.
Really? Okay.
No. No votes for UCF. So,
you know what, though? I bet if UCF was still playing in the American Conference, they would have votes.
Because of the stupid criteria that
Because
these
they would
people
be
are
thinking, oh, well, they're going to have a better record. So,
again, dumb.
It is dumb.
Which makes me want to bring up, but again, before we move on, this relates to big. I know you want to talk about expansion a little bit, conference realignment. We can cover that briefly if you want. I know that's been kind of the talk of the nation here, college football nation. But Drill MVP called into my show the day that the Washington-Oregon news broke, and he had an interesting take on bowl games. And I actually disagreed with him, but I want to get your opinion on it. He believes that this realignment and conference expansion, right, Big Ten and SEC expansion, is reason for college football to drop the 6-win requirement for bowl entry. And here's what I said to that. I said, I who cares? Why does it matter? If his point is, well, you have a 4-8 team from the Big Ten, that's no question, unquestionably going to be better than a 6-6 team from the MAC. That's might be true, but who cares? Okay, a couple things. If a team is 4-8 from the Big Ten or 4-8 from the SEC and they miss out on a bowl game, boo-hoo. They're going to be taking a big old check home because they're part of the Big Ten or the SEC. Whereas Toledo or whoever's 6-6 coming out of the MAC, they need that little bit extra revenue from the bowl game. And again, who really cares? What good does it do a 4-8 Big Ten team to get into a 6-6 or to get into a Little Caesars American Standard Bowl over a 6-6 Toledo or Miami, Ohio? Do you have any opinions on that? I love bowl games. I'm one of the few people that still love the bowl games, even the small bowl games. But Mark, I'm going to be just as excited to watch Toledo versus San Jose State as I would be to watch a 4-8 Nebraska versus a 5-8 Ole Miss. Like I'd almost rather watch a couple of teams that I haven't been watching all year.
I would agree with all of that. So I'm in a similar boat where I am so locked in on the Power Five that the week 0, I will watch some football teams that I will not watch the rest of the year because I will not have that opportunity. I think there's a primetime game on ESPN, week 0, New Mexico State and UMass. It's the Saturday night game. I would have Herb Street and Fowler call the game if I was ESPN. I would. I'd say
New Mexico State and UMass.
Their first Saturday night game on ESPN.
That's on ESPN?
Yes. It's a week 0 game. There's nobody else playing.
Why couldn't C-SPAN have voted to get that one? That is insane. How could you put that on primetime? I wouldn't put that on primetime in the middle of July.
What is ESPN showing the Saturday prior to the season starting? I have no idea.
So there's no other week 0 games that were better options for primetime than
for
New
them.
Mexico State,
no other
UMass.
Options. Notre Dame and Navy are playing, but they'll be playing on probably CBS. And Fox has what's the other? No, actually they don't. Anyway, USC's playing San Jose State, but that's on, I think, the Pac-12 network. Anyway.
That's a great game.
I brought that up to say during week 0, I typically catch a couple teams that I know that I'm never going to watch the rest of the year until bowl play, if they possibly make a bowl. I do enjoy just that one snapshot of all these MAC schools, Conference USA schools that I get to see play.
You know what it is for me, Mark? This is how I view college. And you're different because you're taking it from a national perspective. But as an Iowa guy, there's something special. I've explained to you. This is the best time of year because in August, you haven't lost yet. And there's just something special about hype and, fans being able to dream of a 12-0 record or 11-1 record or whatever and a championship. But once if you lose, say Iowa starts the season off 4-2, 5-2, They're basically out of the playoff hunt. Now, I guess if you run the table, we just said 10-2, 11-2 might get you in the conversation. But you can, with college football, with only being 12 regular season games, you can play yourself out of the national conversation so quickly. And so as an Iowa fan who wants to be in that national conversation, as the year goes on, my mindset of watching Iowa football, watching college football changes. And by the time we get to a bowl game and Iowa's fate's decided, and more often than not, they're not playing for, a Rose Bowl or a national title, certainly. And so they're in another bowl game with everyone else. I'm like you. I enjoy sitting back and watching, what was it last year? Memphis. Who did Memphis play in the bowl game? Memphis and was it Utah State or no, I think it was Buffalo. I think it was Memphis and Buffalo.
Okay.
Why I remember that, don't ask.
I don't know.
But the bottom line is I enjoy watching those games and I'm following them. And I make my picks, and I enjoy that. It's kind of like watching March Madness to me.
I still remember to a certain extent why I remember this. I don't know. A week 0 game from about 2018 was Oregon State and Colorado State. And it was like 48-31. And it was just an entertaining game. Two bad teams. Oregon State was not a good team then. Awful teams. Knew I would never see them again. It was still just fun to watch an opening weekend of football.
So, Mark, John wants me to ask you about a caller you had yesterday named, dude's name was Chris.
Well, I am responsible for posting that comment there. And that call was much like many calls from our friend Chris, where after 3 or 4 minutes, my brain was so entangled that I had no idea what we were talking about.
This was yesterday?
Yes.
Does anybody, I want to get the response in the chat. Does anybody else enjoy hearing about these things? Like, I know you say, well, I'm going to lose viewership if I have these types of ridiculous calls on. I enjoy watching the ridiculous calls sometimes. I mean, we can only break things down so much. I wish we could have a timestamp on when that call came in. Because I'd watch it.
And that's, as you well know, when you get those kind of calls, that's the response in the chat. Half say, hang up, hang up, hang up. And the other half are howling and having a great time and love it.
What, can I ask a question? Why, this is regarding production of your show and managing your show. And you and I are both one-man crews as it relates to post-game and live stream coverage. And I don't think people realize how much is involved with that. But I'm just curious, why do you think people think that they need to tell us to hang up on people? I've never understood that. Like, I'm pretty sure, like, I can understand. I'm capable of making a decision on when to hang up on someone. And if I don't want to hang up on them, I'm not going to hang up on them. Why do I need 18 people in the chat? Hang up on my guy. You have the same thing happen to you. Why does this occur?
Because those people have a voice. So they're exercising their right to show their discontent.
Okay.
There was, and we'll get back to Iowa after I make this one comment, talking about commenters. And, well, this particular person was not a caller, but I can understand his emotional state at the time. This is at the brink of the PAC conference disintegrating into nothing. And this was a Washington State fan. I simply stated that Washington State's series with Washington may cease to exist. I said, my exact words were, don't be surprised if that series ceases to exist. This guy just went on a rampage in the chat, and then he left comments once the video posted that I should apologize for making that statement. I'm dead wrong. And again, people don't listen to the context and the word for word response. And it was, don't be surprised. I was making no predictions. I was just saying, don't be surprised. We have seen countless college football rivalries be thrown to the wayside due to conference realignment.
And it does sound like that. By the way, thank you, John, for giving me the timestamp. It
Really?
does sound like, well, that's what he says. Mid-conversation was 1:44.
Okay.
I'm assuming that's an hour 44. That's not 1 minute and 44 seconds.
No.
But no. The reason I bring it up, didn't we hear a report from, was it Washington, that said that they want to maintain that rivalry in the non-conference?
I don't know. I didn't see that.
Somebody said that.
Did they?
Yeah, somebody said that. So
And
maybe you need
if,
to.
and if that in fact happens, I won't be wrong because I just said don't be surprised. All right, getting back to Iowa and the Big Ten Western Division, and I don't even really remember that conversation yesterday with Chris being that memorable or that entertaining, so I wouldn't waste my time. There are other things that you could watch, folks, on my channel that I hope is more insightful and entertaining. All right, Corey, I'm going to take you through the Big Ten Western Division, and I'm going to read you a statement, and you can just respond. So I've posted these videos a couple times, and basically the phrase that we're playing off of is this the year that fill in the blank?
Okay.
Let's start at the very bottom with Northwestern. Is this the year that Northwestern posts 3 consecutive losing seasons? This has not happened since 2001, 2, and 3.
Absolutely, yes.
And the last time that Northwestern won a Big Ten championship, a share of one, was in 2000. Is this the year? Obviously not, based on your first response. Is this the year that Northwestern wins its first Big Ten championship since the year 2000?
Can I assume that these questions will get tougher? And can I also assume that when I answer a question, you'll tell me if you disagree? And if you don't respond, I'm just going to assume you agree with me.
Yes.
Okay.
And it would be Northwestern's first outright Big Ten title since 1995. Okay, on to Purdue. Is this the year that Purdue posts 3 consecutive winning seasons since 2002, 3, and 4?
No.
Okay, which makes the other null and void. Do you want?
What's
realize,
the other one?
Well, I'm going in both directions, the positive and the negative. So for the positive, Purdue would be winning its first Big Ten championship since the year 2000.
I just don't know where the wins are going to. Like, I'm not saying that won't be a competitive team, but
yeah,
to think of them going 7-5 or 7-6, it's just hard to. You're talking about regular season only. They go 6-6 and win a bowl game. Does that count as a winning season?
Yes, they have not had a winning season.
Okay,
the entire season. So 7-6 would get it done.
My guess is they're a 5-7 team.
Do you know when the last time Purdue won an outright Big Ten championship? 1929. All right, on to Illinois. Illinois, of course, won 8 games last season. Could Illinois win back-to-back, post-back-to-back 8-win seasons for the first time since 1989 and 90?
That's a tough one.
That's how bad their program's been.
Back-to-back 8-win seasons. If we're including the bowl game,
horrible.
I'm going to say yes. I think they can go 7-5 in the regular season, win a bowl game. Sure.
That's how bad Illinois has been.
How long has it been?
1990. 8 wins.
Yeah. And there were some good teams back in the 80s. Correct?
Oh, yeah. Yes. Oh, yeah.
Really good Illinois teams.
Right around that time when they reached their peak and then fell off the wagon.
Yeah, I think they'll win 8 games. They'll be right close. I don't know what the over-under on them is, but my guess is it's 7.5, 7, somewhere in there.
Yeah. Illinois last won a Big Ten championship in 2001.
Okay.
I remember it well. Okay, Nebraska. Could this be the year that Nebraska posts a winning season for the first time since 2016?
No.
6 consecutive losing seasons.
No. Wow. So you've agreed with me on every one so far?
Winning season. I think that they're probably going to go 6-6
and have a shot at a winning season in a bowl game. I'll say no, because I think there's a better chance of them going 5-7 than them going 6-6 and winning a bowl game together.
Do you realize what team has the longest, speaking of bowl games, the longest postseason drought in the Power 5?
Nebraska? How many years?
Since 2016.
Okay.
So they've missed 6 consecutive bowl games. Rutgers has been to a bowl game since Nebraska has been to
a bowl game. Now, in Nebraska's defense, Rutgers got invited at 5-7.
5-8. Yeah, 5-7. I'm sorry. You're right. 5-7. Then they went 5-8. Kansas has been to a bowl game since Nebraska.
So that was one of the best bowl games all of last bowl season.
Yes.
And that was an incredible game last year against Arkansas. Or earlier, was it? I guess it would have been December against Arkansas.
So you've answered the other questions. Could this be the year that Nebraska wins its first conference championship since 1999? Plays in its first conference championship game since 2012. Its second year in the Big Ten.
So far, the only one that I think will happen is the Illinois getting to 8 wins for consecutive years for the first time since 1990. Keeping track here.
Minnesota. Listen to this. PJ Fleck, a little feather in the cap here. Minnesota's won 6 consecutive bowl games. They could win a 7th consecutive bowl game for the first time in school history.
So that's such a hard one to predict.
Yeah, because we don't know who they're going to play in a bowl.
Yeah, it's almost impossible. I'd say sure. I mean, they've got it rolling there. You could say that at some point the odds are against them, but
yeah. And the worse they are, the worse of a team they're going to play. You know, they could run into it's not like they've played a murderer's row of postseason opponents. You know, Syracuse, Georgia Tech. Yeah. so PJ. You know,
who'd they
West
get
Virginia.
West Virginia. I was gonna say 2 years ago it was West Virginia.
That's 3 of them. What would his other one be? Oh, they beat a really good Auburn team. That was their one nice win, 2019. And ironically, they had lost the previous 7 consecutive bowl games before that. Could this be the year that Minnesota reaches its first Big Ten championship game?
No.
Wins the Big Ten since 1967.
No.
All right. Could this be the year that Minnesota loses a non-conference game versus the Power 5? They have posted 9 consecutive wins.
Really? That's a good stat. 9 consecutive wins against Power 5 teams outside of the Big Ten?
Yes.
Wait, does that include bowl games?
Maybe. I think it would have to. The last time I made these notes a long time ago. Now I forget.
Okay.
They lost to TCU in 2015. They have won all of the games since. But they've got North Carolina on the road week 2 or 3.
Yeah, I'd say that streak's going to be broken.
Ooh, I would have to think. A good game. I'm looking forward to that game.
That's week 2?
Yes.
Okay.
Looking forward to that because I think people are writing off Minnesota.
I'm not writing them off. I just think they do not have the schedule that Wisconsin, Iowa, and Illinois have, and they did lose a lot. I think the losses of Ibrahim and I mean they lost some players, and you know, we'll see. I mean, if Fleck has done a great job just kind of plugging and playing up front, but at some point you think that's gonna catch up to you.
Brian, thank you so much for the contribution there. So hit the like button. Join the Swarm. Is that a thing? The Swarm?
The Swarm. That's the Iowa Collective.
Oh, okay. That's right.
Yep.
I knew I had heard that somewhere. I thought that was connected to you in some way.
I appreciate the what's the upside logo from one of our shirts or sweatshirts. I can't quite tell what that's off of. It looks like a sweatshirt. So appreciate that, Brian.
And then check out Corey's cool merch. Yes, do that. From the Hawkeye of the Storm. What's the best way to do that? To get some merch?
Yeah, you can. So our merch store is on Spreadshop. So if you head over to my channel, click on any of the descriptions, there's a link to the store.
And lastly, for the Golden Gophers, could this be the year that Minnesota defeats Wisconsin for a 3rd consecutive season for the first time since 1984, 5, 6, and 7?
Where does that game be? Is that in Minneapolis or in Madison? It's got to be in Madison.
I don't know for sure.
No, I think that's in. This would be the 3rd straight year.
Yes, they've beaten them the last 2 years.
It has to be in Minneapolis because 2 years ago, I remember when Minnesota beat Wisconsin and that secured the West for Iowa. That game was in Minneapolis. So, boy, that's a tough one. I'll say no, just because I still have more confidence in personnel at Wisconsin, especially late in the. That's what last game of the season. by that point, I think Fickle and that staff has things, I don't want to say rolling. I don't know where they'll be in late November, but I'll say no, because I still have a lot of personnel questions for Minnesota.
On Wisconsin. Is this the year Wisconsin wins its first division title since 2019?
It's not really.
Okay.
No.
Yeah, they've missed 3 years.
No, I don't think so.
Their first Big Ten championship since 2012. That was a bit of an odd Big Ten championship because they finished third in the division, but won the Big Ten championship. Do you remember the circumstances surrounding that situation?
That was in 2012?
Yes.
Who did they play? Nebraska?
Yes.
They were third in the Legends division?
I couldn't keep track
of
that.
Leaders.
Yes, whichever. The one with Ohio State, Penn State.
I don't remember. What were the circumstances in 12?
So Ohio State went undefeated. They were 12-0.
Okay.
But they were on probation for 1 year. That was Urban Meyer's first season.
Okay.
So they were ineligible. Penn State finished second. They were 8-4 overall. They were 6-2 in the conference. So Wisconsin at 4-4 in the conference went to the conference championship game and won. Went to the Rose Bowl. Finished 8-6 that year.
So they lost the Rose Bowl.
Yes.
Who'd they play in the Rose Bowl?
Stanford.
So Penn State was on probation, correct?
From Ohio State.
Sandusky stuff. I forgot those two teams were on probation at the same time. That's
the two top seeds in the conference. It's kind of strange.
In the division.
Yes.
In the division. Yeah.
Will this be the first time since 20? I don't have a date here, unfortunately. Wisconsin, though, is gunning for a fourth consecutive bowl win.
Okay.
Would be finishing in the top 10 if they were able to do that for the first time since 2017. Wisconsin is 8-1 in its last 9 bowl games. And finally, the Iowa Hawkeyes. And we've heard this one a few times. Could this be the year? Will this be the year that Iowa finishes in the top 50 in total offense for the first time since 2006 in a full season?
No.
Top 50. That's
no. It's just a huge jump. It's not that I don't have confidence in this offense to take a jump with personnel, but that is just a massive, colossal jump when you look at the numbers.
Of course, the last Big Ten championship was in 2004.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, which is more likely? They finish top 50 in offense or they win a Big Ten championship? That's a tough question.
That is a tough question.
Which is more likely, that Iowa finishes with a top 50 offense or they win the Big Ten title?
They win the Big Ten title.
I think I agree. I think I agree. I think because I think they can win the Big Ten title with a top 70, top 80 offense.
Yeah.
If the defense is elite. I think they could go to that. They play. Here's the deal. I know there's going to be some Michigan fans that rip me because we have that love-hate relationship. But you do remember last year, the game against Michigan, as bad as Iowa's offense was, and it was horrendous. Weren't they within 7, like late in the fourth quarter?
If I remember this correctly, Iowa fans, correct me otherwise, they had that fourth down play at the goal line. And I believe it was 20-7. And they would have gone to 20-14 with a chance to make a stop, get the ball back to win the game. I know I'm
okay. Just thank you for the clarification, but that's what I remember.
That game got to like 20-0 early third quarter. I don't remember who else was playing because that was my game for noon. That was my number one game. Got to 20-0 with Iowa's offense, especially. I was gone. I was out. I was on to other stuff. And then I flipped back and I saw those couple plays leading to that goal line play. And I'm like, oh, they're going to cut it to 20-14. They got a chance.
You're right. They were goal line. I remember. I mean, that's just they had 2 nice drives down the field. They had gotten on the field, 2 nice drives. And yeah, you score there in one play, and it's 20-14. You got shot, but of course they did not. And
then they gave up a meaningless touchdown, but then they also scored a meaningless touchdown.
so what was it? 27-14 final.
Yeah. And then finally for the Hawkeyes here, do you know when the last time that Iowa won an outright Big Ten championship? This has been a
1985.
while. Yes. Wow. Working on 40 years.
Yeah.
Well,
the good news is there aren't no shared titles anymore.
They've had quite a few shared since then.
Yeah, they were very close. Obviously, very close in 2009. They were overtime against Ohio State. They win that. Would have been an outright. Am I correct or no? 2009.
Ohio State.
Where did Ohio State finish conference-wise?
7-1.
Yeah, so Iowa would have. Yeah, Iowa would have had that outright.
Oh, because they went 6-2.
Who?
Oh, Iowa.
Yeah. Their only losses that year were Northwestern and Ohio State.
Yeah.
So they would have won it outright had they won that. And they would go beat Minnesota the next week, which they did, but they would have done that. And they were, they were one. I don't even know what you want to call that one.
Both of those seasons, 09 and 10, or am I getting them 08 and 9?
Well, no, they weren't really close. They weren't really that close. Well, 08, they won 4 games by a total of, 08, they lost 4 games by a total of 12 points, but they finished 8-4 and then beat South Carolina in the Outback Bowl. 2010 was the year of all the hype. And of course, that was the year they lost to Wisconsin. Things kind of derailed.
Yeah. Well, maybe I get those mixed. I don't get them mixed up, but maybe I tack on the extra year of it being for the Big Ten championship because both of those wins enabled Ohio State to win the Big Ten championship. One shared with Penn State, the other outright.
And I'll say this, if there's some of the bigger what ifs, and we could do this for a show sometime. I know we're in fall camp, so maybe it's not a good time of the year. But like some of the big what ifs for Iowa. What if Melvin Spears goes higher? You don't even know who Melvin Spears is.
I know that name.
What if Melvin? He's if you go back and watch the, who's the kid that scored the touchdown for Michigan State in 2015? L.J. Scott. If you watch that L.J. Scott run, Melvin Spears, who's a backup linebacker, comes in, goes low. L.J. Scott's got the ball up like this. And he stretches it over the goal line. If Spears goes high, that ball's coming out. I mean, frankly, he probably could have just ripped it away from him. Instead, he went low. L.J. Scott reaches over to the goal line. Michigan State wins. What if Melvin Spears had went high? What if in 2000? What if Sean Green had had his breakout year in 2009 instead of 2008? Because that was such a better team in 2009. I mean, it was a good team in 2008. They lost, like I say, they lost 4 games by a total of 12 points. But imagine with the rushing attack that struggled in 2009. A couple of young guys, Brandon Wager, Adam Robinson, young freshmen. But imagine had they had Sean, or if Sean Green had just stuck around for an extra year coming off a Doak Walker Award win title. Maybe they beat Ohio State. Maybe they, honestly, you could make the argument, Mark, with a better run game. And I have to go back at that Northwestern game, but you remember when Stanzi got rolled up on in the end zone, they were, I think, up 10-0 on Northwestern or 7-0. They were up. Had they had a dominant run game, they probably would have won that game regardless of who was at quarterback. We may have been talking about a 12-0 season, or at least they would have had a shared title, right? They would have had a shared title with Ohio State. They could have lost the next week and still had a share of the title.
Yes.
So, I mean, just a lot of what ifs there in those 2 years, 2009 and 2015.
That Ohio State team won the Rose Bowl over Oregon.
That was here's the deal. Regardless of what people want to say about 2015, right? Weak schedule. They played Michigan State real tough, great game, and then Michigan State got trounced by Alabama. But what you just said is a valid point. There have been years where Iowa has been close to being elite. And in 2009, I think that's the best team of the century. This is the best team of the century. Give me a better Iowa team during the 21st century. 2004, 2000. I mean, people bring up 2002, 2004, and maybe it's a recency bias, but with the way Iowa played Ohio State without Ricky Stanzi in the shoe that week,
Yeah.
and then they beat a BCS. They won an Orange Bowl, beat Georgia Tech.
And I have to admit, and again, I'm going to throw 2008 into it because from the Ohio State side, that was a huge game because they needed that to share the Big Ten championship. And Terrell Pryor had to, I get the two games mixed up. Yeah, the game in Iowa City, he had to pull off like a 4th and 18 to win the game,
Yeah,
to
remember
extend
that.
the drive that I didn't give any thought to Ohio State losing those. Like I didn't turn that game on either one of those years thinking Ohio State might lose this game. Like it was a bit of a shock to me that they were playing close games.
In 2009?
Yeah.
Why were you shocked by that when Iowa had one loss on the year?
You have to just understand the mentality. It's just,
well, Iowa was without Ricky Stanzi, and I think most people thought without Stanzi they didn't stand a chance, especially with how poorly Vandenberg played the week before against Northwestern. But had Stanzi played in that game, I mean, Vandenberg played great. Let's just acknowledge that. He played great in that game. He was phenomenal. And there were passes dropped, but he was on the money. That's one of the greatest. That game, here we go with hyperbole. That Iowa-Ohio State game is one of the greatest single game performances by an Iowa quarterback during the Kirk Ferentz era. And I know you go back to 2002, you look at the Brad Banks year. He had some great performances. Nate Stanley had 2017 against Iowa State where he threw 5 touchdowns. That would have to be in the conversation. CJ Beathard 2015 against Iowa State. Played a pretty darn good game in Jack Trice. But, man, that performance by Vandenberg, given the circumstances, his first career start with a Big Ten title on the line. I mean, man, that was – we ought to have – here's what we ought to do, Mark. We ought to have a watch party on this channel where we watch that game together right here with everybody. 2009 Iowa-Ohio State.
Yeah.
Could this be the first? Could this be the first? Well, we'll do the. Could this be the year? Could this be the year where Iowa plays?
We can, though, unfortunately.
Say it again.
I don't believe that we can, unfortunately.
You can't just with legalities.
Yeah.
Is this the year where Iowa plays Ohio State for a Big Ten title for the first time since 2009? Fair question. Very fair question. That could very well happen. This may be the first year since 2009 where Iowa's playing Ohio State with a conference championship on the line. Real quickly, will that happen? Will that happen?
I would give both teams, especially Ohio State, a second place standing in their division.
Okay,
right now.
You're actually tipping your cap to Wisconsin. So the talking heads have gotten to you, Mark.
Maybe.
Okay.
Maybe they and I can't let that happen because what comes to mind about 3 years ago, Nebraska was the media pick to win the West, and I actually bit on that. And the entire summer, I was thinking nothing but Iowa, Wisconsin. What's my decision going to be? And they got to me. I admit it. That's awful for me to admit too.
There are too many question marks at Wisconsin right now. I believe that. I'm not saying that they can't win the title. I won't be shocked if they do. But for me to put my eggs in the Wisconsin basket preseason, there's just too many question marks with quarterback, with the coaching staff, with personnel, with scheme. Too many question marks to overcome.
You are really bullish on Iowa.
I'm not bullish on Iowa. I'm just bringing up Wisconsin. These people who are bullish.
That you shouldn't be.
Well, there are people who are bringing up Wisconsin as the clear. I just don't understand. Is Wisconsin's personnel that much better than Iowa's? Like, I haven't studied Wisconsin's roster up and down. No. But they brought in some people from the transfer portal, but that's not always plug and play. And schematically, we understand the story. You mentioned, I think, a couple weeks ago, there's the argument that could be made that they're trying to fit a square peg in a round hole. I don't know if that's the case or not, but I just think and I see our Wisconsin fan in the chat, so I appreciate that. They may win the West. I just think to bank on them I think Iowa's the safest pick.
Yeah. Oh, I think Michigan's the safer pick than Ohio State in the other division.
They've
But I
got an
think
easier
Ohio
schedule.
State's more talented.
Ohio State's got a tough schedule.
Yeah.
Now, Wisconsin has a pretty favorable schedule as well. So does Illinois. And Illinois is the dark horse in this division right now.
Yes.
I think it's not Minnesota. It's not Purdue. It's not Nebraska. I think it's Illinois. But I would still, based on returning production and just all circumstances considered, I'd lean toward Iowa. Heavily lean toward Iowa.
I've grown a little weary of hearing this comment.
I know. We keep revisiting that, don't we? It just keeps getting brought up over and over again.
All right. Yes. Wisconsin's running backs are always, or their wide receivers. Oh, their wide receivers are going to be good. Okay.
So who are their wide receivers? They got a kid from, let's see, they got a kid
We're
from.
going to delve in on this here. What time?
They got a couple transfers at wide receiver, right?
Yeah,
they had a couple guys leave.
Shoot, they had more transfers than anyone in the Big Ten
via the portal. Danny Davis is not. He's not there, right? He's done.
Been there forever. Let's see. I'm going to cheat on this one. Their wide receiver play. Oh, Chimere DK. He's their number one wide receiver. 47 catches, 6 touchdowns. Yeah. Skylar Bell coming back, 30 catches, 5 touchdowns.
CJ Williams is the one that I kind of forgot about.
Oh, yeah, the transfer coming in from USC. Yeah.
Yep.
Keontez Lewis, 20 catches last year. Yeah, CJ Williams, Bryson Green, he's another transfer coming in. Okay. CJ Williams caught like 5 passes last year.
Caleb Brown got like 5 passes last year. 1, excuse me.
1 pass.
So do you think Mark, do you think there's any reason for people to be reading into a clip on social media of camp today in Iowa City of Caleb Brown running with Deacon Hill in the 3s?
No. Pictures are nothing but a way to just kind of draw a little bit of interest.
Well, it wasn't a picture. It was a clip.
Oh, it was a clip.
Yeah.
Okay. Thought you said it was a picture.
No, it was a clip.
Well, regardless, they didn't run a play. They just kind of set up a play formation.
That's a good question. Let's see if they ran a play. Let me go back over to. No, they didn't run a play. It just shows them lining up.
Let's see. Our guy here, Smiles Per Gallon, is saying, check out Matt Rule's record versus top 25 teams. Well, I got to think at Baylor, he had an 11-3 year, and he had a 7-6 year. I don't know that last Baylor team that got Matt Rule his NFL job was pretty good. They were pretty good. They beat a lot of winning record teams I'm looking at.
By the way, Mark, before we wind this show down, just want to let everybody know, if you didn't realize this, we've got Iowa Media Day Friday, and we've got the open scrimmage Saturday. So this is going to be a busy, busy week. So I haven't put out any content here the last day or so. Did post the Cooper DeJean podcast for everybody. If you haven't listened to that, definitely do that on YouTube. It'll be on Spotify here soon. But yeah, I mean, with busy week, there's lots of. We're going to be able to have some more to talk about, actual substantial stuff next week. And Mark, I've got some questions here that I look forward to asking Kirk specifically. I know you got an opportunity to talk to Kirk a little bit. Did you ask Kirk a question at Media Day, Big Ten Media Day?
Did not. I would like to know what What is the team's goal? What are their goals? I would like to know.
Well, thank you for promoting the podcast with Cooper DeJean, Mark, because if you need to go watch that. I know you don't listen to other people's podcasts. You need to go watch the show with Cooper DeJean.
Okay.
I know you're busy. I asked him that question. I asked him that exact question. I said, what are this team's goals? And I said, I want you to be specific. And he actually, what's interesting about his response, and I should probably publish a short with this because I think people would watch it. His response was interesting. He said, obviously we want to win a Big Ten West title. We want to get back to Indy, win a Big Ten championship. And then he kind of paused and he said, I hate even saying this, but we want to do more than that. We want to make the top 4. So part of me is thinking, why do you hate saying that? I almost wonder if the reason he hates saying that is because that is so foreign to the culture of Iowa football. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. I think that's kind of Kirk Ferentz. I talked to Cooper about this. Kirk Ferentz has always been that one game at a time type of coach. And I think you have to do that to be successful.
Yes.
But what I think is powerful potentially about the leadership of this team is that you've got your head coach he is Kirk Ferentz, right? He is the prototypical one game at a time coach. He's seasoned, he's a veteran, etc. Then you have Cooper DeJean, who's kind of like a Kirk Ferentz prodigy, right? He's a small town kid from Iowa. He even admitted he's a one game at a time type of character. But even he acknowledged Cade's different. Cade comes from Michigan where he has, this experience winning titles, getting to the college football playoff. And he's got a different type of mindset. He's got a different chip on his shoulder that maybe we're not used to in Iowa leaders. Maybe because typically Iowa quarterbacks are inbred with that Iowa way, the Iowa culture that is the structured one game at a time, we're not looking ahead mentality. And that's good. But Mark, one thing I think that is very powerful is the ability to complement one another, whether you're talking about a marriage or a partnership in a business or, even in sports. I think the dynamics with the leaders of this football team this year have the ability to complement each other really, really well. Because you're going to have those steady eddies, as always. But now, maybe for the first time in at least some time, you have a guy in Cade McNamara who's got a different mentality. He's got big things on his mind. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I think we need to embrace that. And I was just refreshed to hear Cooper DeJean bring up the Final Four. And maybe I need to ask more people. I'll be anxious. Maybe that'll be one question I try to ask some other student athletes. What are team goals? Because I want to see if other people are willing to volunteer that. But he was.
Yeah, it's a fence that you have to stay on, but it can be accomplished to be able to say, we have these huge goals, but we know that the next rep on the bench press or the next sprint or that has to be the focus, because we're not going to get there if we're not developing ourselves, watching film, working out, doing everything we need to do to prepare and then execute play by play. Utah State's not going to get them to the Final Four, but without the Utah State win, they're not getting to the Final Four.
Right.
It's possible, but you know what I mean.
My only problem with not ever bringing up, because I don't, maybe he has and I've just missed it. If he's brought it up, somebody tell me. But I don't recall Kirk Ferentz ever bringing up aspirations to win a national title, at least not recently, or get to the college football playoff. I don't recall that. And some would say that's fine. They don't have a problem with that. But it doesn't seem, not that he volunteers it, because he's got that mentality, but players, coaches have never really been afraid to say, we want to win a Big Ten West title and we want to win a Big Ten championship. So why are we stopping there in our aspirations? Like, you're already projecting forward through the entire regular season. Why not project higher? That's so, if that makes sense. And I'll be anxious to hear what some of these other leaders in this team talk about.
And even to call the Big Ten championship a goal, knowing that you cannot win the Big Ten championship without winning the division. So that's
right.
Really the first accomplishment. Of course, each win's an accomplishment, but that's the first stop So a lot of people would say, if the goal is to win a national championship, you shouldn't even talk about that because you've got to do so many things to get there, that shouldn't even be. Now, I do apologize. I've never heard this criticism on anyone on the show, but I do realize that maybe I bring up another one or two teams in this conference too often, but just as a point of comparison. But Ryan Day talks about winning every game all the time. He talks about we're supposed to win every game. That's the standard. We realize if we lose one game, that's a disappointment. Like he talks about that they're supposed to win every game.
It would be different if Iowa was winning national titles and they didn't talk about it, because then it's just like, well, our actions speak louder than words, but they don't. Yeah. So at some point, it would at least be nice to hear, hey, we want this. Not, you don't want the feeling that you've accepted that it's just not possible. It's just not reasonable here. I'd like to go back to 2015 and be a fly on the wall of the Iowa locker room prior to that Michigan State game.
Yeah.
What do you think that pep talk was like for Iowa before the Big Ten championship game? I mean, the playoff had to get brought up, right? Had to. You can't not bring it up. Like, we're a game away from the Final Four. We're a half away from the playoff.
Yeah.
I just would like to hear it.
Well, of course, Kirk and the players were asked that, I'm sure, every week coming down the stretch. 7-0, 8-0, 9-0. We've got one question here, Corey, for you, coming from Badger and Bournemouth fan. What do you think of Iowa and Wisconsin? What do you think they can do in the new, tougher Big Ten next year? This was a topic Corey and I were going to hit on, but of course, time ran out. We've got plenty of time to talk about Big Ten realignment.
Going to be tough for everybody, Mark. Assuming the college football playoff reevaluates who gets bids, and it sounds like they're going to do that, right? And rightfully so, with the disintegration of the Pac-12. I think the Big Ten with what are we heading to? A 12-team college football playoff, right? Am I 12? Is that yes. Right? They're a 12-team college football playoff with the Big Ten and the SEC dominating at the top. Boy, I could see a scenario where each conference gets 4 teams in some years. Is that fair?
Yes.
Okay. So if like I said before, regardless of Oregon, Washington, USC, UCLA, I think, and this goes back to aspirations and goals, but I think college football has become so laser focused in on who makes the Final Four. And in the future, it'll be who makes the Final 12. Whether that's good or bad, it's going to be the same for schools like Iowa and Wisconsin. It's going to be a lot easier to make the college football playoff than it will be to win the conference. So if Iowa's going to win a conference title outright for the first time since 1985, they better do it this year, because they may never do it again. And never, I know, is a strong word, but it's going to be really, really hard when you think of the powers that be, Mark. Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State, USC, Oregon, Washington, Penn State, Michigan State. I mean, just go down the list, and then you have all the teams that are right there neck and neck with Iowa year in and year out, like Minnesota, like Wisconsin. It's going to be fascinating to see how it works out. I'm anxious to see how the schedules change and adjust, because, when this news initially broke earlier in the week, Mark, or last week, I had made the comment on my live show, I'm assuming this is going to happen in 25. Well, not the case. This is happening next year. So I like that. I like that because I hate when we get we got the USC UCLA announcement with the wait 2 years. So I like the fact that it's next year, but I'll be anxious to see how the schedules change. I guess they have to overhaul the schedules, right?
Yes.
This Flex Protect Plus thing that you really liked. Boop, bye.
Well, maybe not.
Well, I think it has to.
Well, the schedule has to change, but that concept can still be implemented.
We can talk about that on another day, but I was discussing this with a friend last night, and I just wonder, like, if you end up with, they've got 18 teams in the conference now, right? 18 teams in the conference now. if you can expand to Notre Dame and say you add one Florida school. Maybe that won't happen because of the ACC grant of rights thing. But if they were to be able to add Notre Dame and best case scenario, Miami, or take any one of the three, Florida State, Clemson, Miami out of the ACC. Now you've got a 20-team conference. Wouldn't it just make sense to play your division, to play a 9-game division, and then have the champion of each division go to the Big Ten championship game?
And you would never play a team from the other division.
Listen, you get above 20, you're not going to play every team but every 3 years anyways.
Iowa would be playing teams out of conference, not even named Iowa State, more than they would be playing teams in the Big Ten.
The only other thing I could think of is there a way you could create like now bear with me on this, and you're free to steal this idea and post it to your show, because I know you never have original content, right, Mark?
No, I steal all my ideas. Yes.
So what do you think about the idea of like a 5 or 6 game conference schedule? 5 or 6 game conference schedule.
Okay.
And then like the top 2 or 3 teams from each division. Actually, let's do this a little easier. Make this a simple concept. 6 game conference schedule.
Yeah.
Then you have the top 2 teams from each division playing a double elimination style of Big Ten playoff.
Double eliminate. What is this? Basketball or baseball?
Baseball, right? 6-team conference season, Mark. 6-team. What am I saying? 6 week? 6 week. Yeah. 6-week conference schedule. So that means you get, as opposed to expanding to a 10-game conference schedule, now you have, again, top 2 teams from each division seated up against their counterpart from the opposite division, and a double elimination. And then you fill the season and then everybody else plays each other based on who doesn't make the 4-team Big Ten playoff.
So suddenly we go from a situation in which schedules have to be made 10 years in advance for people to plan to go to scheduling games like 10 days in advance.
Yeah, that's correct. You're still going to have like 8 games in the schedule, Mark. You're going to have.
I haven't thought it through, but I'm not hating it. I'm not. I would be open to looking into that a little bit more.
Okay, I'll take that.
So again, you're going to eventually play 9 conference games, correct?
That would be correct.
But 6 are predetermined, scheduled. And then the final 3, you're playing the like-seeded placed team in the other division.
Correct. And then, of course, the winner of that game, the winners of those 2 games would play each other. Okay. And the winner of that game would get a week off, while the loser of that game would play the winner of the loser's bracket game.
Okay. If you have 9 team divisions and you're only playing 6 games.
No, I said 10. I said 10 team divisions.
Okay. Got it. 10 team divisions. And you're playing 6 teams in your division. Correct?
Correct.
Before this lunacy starts. Okay, you're playing 6 teams in your division. You're going to be in direct competition with teams that you didn't play in your own division before you start playing these teams in the other division. So what if you have a tie? You could have a tie for the division championship between 2 teams that never played. Correct?
The top 2 from the division make the Big Ten Final Four.
Let's say Iowa and Wisconsin are in the Big Ten Western Division of 10. They both finish 8-1, but they didn't play.
Okay.
Because not everyone's going to play.
They both get in.
Get into what?
The Final Four. The Big Ten Final Four, Mark.
What if there's 3 teams that finish 7-2, tied for, and they didn't all play?
That's why we have tiebreakers. There've always been tiebreakers. There always will be tiebreakers.
But those tiebreakers currently in college football involve teams that played each other.
There are tiebreakers down the line, correct? I think the chances of that happening are probably slim and none.
It's not none, because I just came up with a very conceivable situation. There are no divisions, Corey, that are played in college football in which all the teams do not play each other. That's the course of action in a division, for everyone to play everyone to determine the division champion.
Okay. Well, we're reformatting what this all looks like. So if we want to go to pods and have 4 or 5 team pods and have the top team from each pod make a Final Four, you can do that too.
I am not crazy about playing playoffs within a conference just to get to the playoffs. I'm not saying it's can be avoided. I'm just not crazy about it.
Yeah. How else are you going to sort out a conference championship game when you have 20 teams in the conference?
You're not.
So that's the problem.
I'm not crazy about it.
We are redefining what a conference is, what divisions are, I think we're redefining all of it. I think we're redefining what success is in college football, and we've been in the process of doing that for years, since the inception of the college football playoff. Well, really since the inception of the BCS national championship game, but especially since the playoff, and now the playoff expanding and conference realignment. I'm just saying we're redefining all this stuff anyways.
Oh, good Lord. Pumpernickel. Okay. I think this was a joke. Thank you. Okay. It was a joke. It was a joke. If there's one thing that would ever get me riled up and ready to go on the attack, it's when people say, let the college football playoff selection committee go by their rankings to determine who your conference champion. What? You're giving up the autonomy and sovereignty of your conference to a stupid committee?
Well, he's saying he's not saying the CFP committee. He's saying BCS.
I know he is, but then he's joking. Thank you, Pumpernickel. Thank you for including the second one, because I almost blew up, because I don't know how many people thank you, Pumpernickel. I caught that. You're joking. So I don't know how many arguments I've had with people that when there's been some kind of convoluted way to try to determine a division or conference champion, oh, just go by the college football playoff rankings. What? You're a conference, and you're going to give up the sovereignty of your conference, the ability to decide and have authority over. You're going to turn that over to a selection committee, 13 people in a boardroom to decide what's going on in your conference. That's idiocy.
One more note, Mark. You could just go top 4 with no divisions.
Yeah. Oh, 20 teams listed out.
Yeah. The scheduling would be a lot more variable from year to year, and you just go top 4 from the conference that makes a round robin style or double elimination style Big Ten playoff.
Then it becomes just pure embarrassment that such and such team finished in 19th place in the Big Ten.
That's going to happen anyways. If a team finishes in 10th place in one of the divisions, it's basically the same.
Yeah. Well, after that big 4 in the conference, then you've got Iowa, Wisconsin, Oregon, Washington. Boy, it's becoming a thick 9 or 10 teams.
But if anybody wants my thoughts on conference realignment, I am sort of saddened by it, because it means that things are changing, and change is always difficult. But I am just happy that Iowa's in the Big Ten.
Yeah.
And they're safe. And I'm as much as you're hesitant and nervous for change and for new things, I am excited about it. And I will look forward to games in Eugene. I may even go out to Eugene. I got family near Eugene. I think that'd be a fun trip. Now it'd be a big trip. It's not like running over to Evanston or Lincoln or Minneapolis, but it is, it'd be a fun trip. So, and Outson Stadium, fantastic place. That's just a phenomenal place to play a football game, I think.
That's what I hear. Hawkeyes Live every Tuesday, folks. Make it a habit. 4:30 Central Time. Be here next Tuesday. Tell your friends, tell your family. Bring in 5 or 50, and we'll make it a good time again next Tuesday as we get set for the opener, and that date with Utah State looms. In the meantime, Corey Bratta from the Hawkeye of the Storm, get on over there. Check out the Cooper DeJean interview. I'm going to check it out, so you check it out. I've also left a link to division alignment in the Big Ten. But again, Cooper DeJean, great interview. Pro Football Focus named him one of the top 50 players in college football this week. And not that he needed that accreditation, but great stuff out of Corey and Cooper DeJean on from the Hawkeye of the Storm. We'll see you back here, everyone, next Tuesday. We've got our Nebraska show starting in about 10 minutes.